We gather here tonight to speak of a mystery that has been hidden from the foundation of the world. It is a mystery so profound and yet so dangerously simple that when it is finally grasped, it shatters the illusions of a lifetime and liberates the soul from the prison of circumstance. I can stand here night after night and tell you the same truth over and over again until the words become like a rhythmic drumbeat in your mind. But there comes a solitary moment, a terrifying and beautiful moment of extraction, when the concept ceases to be a theory and becomes a concrete reality. That is the moment we are aiming for tonight. We are here to dismantle the single greatest misunderstanding that has plagued humanity for centuries. This misunderstanding is the root cause of every war, every famine, every personal heartbreak, and every moment of despair you have ever felt. It is the belief that the cause of your life lies outside of you. You have been trained by tradition, by education, and by the evidence of your own senses to believe that you are a victim of the world. You have been taught that you are a tiny speck of dust in a vast, indifferent universe and that your destiny is dictated by forces beyond your control. You look to the economy to determine your wealth. You look to the government to determine your freedom. You look to the doctors to determine your health. And you look to the grave to determine your end. You believe that reality is something hard and solid that happens to you, and that your only choice is how you react to it. This is the great illusion. This is the dream from which you must awaken. The truth is the exact opposite. You do not live in a world of hard facts. You live in a world of shadows. And the only reason these shadows appear to have power over you is because you have forgotten that you are the light that is casting them. The great misunderstanding begins with your concept of God. For generations, man has looked up at the sky and prayed to a being he believes is separate from himself. He pleads with a God who is far off. He bargains with a God who is judgmental. He builds temples of stone and performs rituals, hoping to appease a deity that exists somewhere in the clouds. But I tell you tonight that this external God is a fiction. There is no God outside of you. This may sound like blasphemy to the religious mind, but it is the ultimate liberation for the spiritual man. The God of the universe, the creator of the galaxies, and the author of your life is your own wonderful human imagination. That is the true identity of the being you say I am to. When you say I am, you are announcing the presence of God. You are not a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. You are the spirit itself dreaming that you are a man. We must be very precise about this. When we speak of the imagination, we are not speaking of the fleeting daydreams of a child. We are not speaking of fantasy, which is an escape from reality. We are speaking of the creative power of God. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. That is the divine body we call Jesus Christ in Scripture. Because of your previous training, you may question this. You may hesitate to take it seriously because it places too much responsibility on your shoulders. It is easier to blame the devil or to blame fate or to blame your parents for your life. But if imagination is God, then you are the operant power. You are the architect of your own misfortune, and you are the architect of your own salvation. There is no one to blame, and there is no one to change but self. This is a hard pill to swallow for the ego, but it is the elixir of life for the soul. Think about the implications of this. If your imagination is the cause of your reality, then nothing appears in your world unless it has first been imagined by you. You might say, I never imagined this sickness, or I never imagined this poverty. But I tell you that imagination is not always a conscious act. You are constantly imagining. Every moment of the day, you are carrying on inner conversations with yourself. You are assuming things about your neighbor. You are fearing the future. You are regretting the past. These invisible activities are not empty thoughts. They are the seeds that you are planting in the garden of your reality. And because the law of the harvest is absolute, you are reaping exactly what you have sown, even if you do not remember the sowing. The world is a mirror that reflects your inner activity with ruthless accuracy. If you do not like the reflection, you cannot change it by breaking the mirror. You must change your face. You must change your inner activity. The tragedy of the great misunderstanding is that it keeps you fighting shadows. You spend your life trying to change people, trying to accumulate money, trying to fix your body, all from the outside. You struggle and you strive and you manipulate and you force. And sometimes you get a temporary result, but the pattern always returns. Why does it return? Because you have not changed the cause. You have rearranged the furniture in the room, but you have not changed the house. Until you realize that everything is coming from within, you will be a slave to the world of effects. You will be like a dog chasing its own tail, thinking the tail is an enemy that must be caught. But the moment you stop and realize, I am doing this, I am the one keeping this pattern alive, that is the moment you regain your power. We call this power Jesus Christ, not to convert you to a religion, but to reveal to you your own nature. Scripture is not a record of historical events. It is a psychological drama taking place in the consciousness of man. Jesus Christ is not a man who lived 2,000 years ago and died on a cross to save you from your sins. Jesus Christ is the personification of the human imagination. He is the power in you that can save you from your present state of limitation. When the Bible says all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made, it is speaking of your imagination. Look around you. The clothes you are wearing, the chair you are sitting on, the building you are in. At one time, these things did not exist as physical objects. They only existed as an image in the mind of a man. Someone imagined them, and then the power of imagination objectified them. If imagination can create a building, why can it not create a health? Why can it not create a fortune? Why can it not create a destiny? It can and it does, but we have forgotten how to use it. We use it unconsciously to create nightmares instead of using it consciously to create paradise. The great misunderstanding is that we think we are waiting for God to act, but God is waiting for us to act. God has given us the power of the word. He has given us the power to call things that are not as though they were. But instead of using this power to bless ourselves, we use it to curse ourselves. We say, I am sick. I am tired. I am broke. I am lonely. And the imagination, which is the faithful servant, says, so be it, and creates that reality. We must reverse this process. We must repent. And repentance does not mean crying over your past sins. Repentance means a radical change of attitude. It means turning your back on the evidence of the senses and turning your face toward the vision of your desire. Tonight, I hope to show you through the stories of ordinary people how true this is. These are not stories of saints or mystics living in a cave. These are stories of people like you. People with bills to pay. People with heartbreaks. People who face the impossible walls of this shadow world and learn how to walk through them. You may never really lose yourself to the extent that I wish you would, but if you can just grasp a fraction of this truth, it will transform your life. You will stop being a thermometer on the wall that just reflects the temperature of the room, and you will become the thermostat that sets the temperature. You will stop being a victim of the news and the economy, and you will become a creator of your own economy. This is the invitation of the great misunderstanding. It invites you to step out of the illusion of objectivity. It invites you to stop trusting your five senses which deceive you every day. Your senses tell you the earth is flat, but it is round. Your senses tell you the sun moves across the sky, but the earth is turning. If your senses can deceive you about the nature of the physical universe, why do you trust them about the nature of your life? Why do you trust them when they tell you that you are poor or sick or alone? They are lying to you. They are only showing you the dead past. The present moment is the only reality, and in the present moment you have the power to imagine a new thing. So as we enter into the deeper parts of this message, I ask you to suspend your judgment. Put aside your rational mind for an hour. The rational mind is a wonderful tool for analyzing the past, but it is a terrible tool for creating the future. The rational mind only knows what has happened. Imagination knows what can happen. I am not a rational person when it comes to the world, because I know the world is a stage and I am the writer of the play. I do not let the actors on the stage dictate the script to me. I rewrite the script in the silence of my own heart, and then I watch the actors conform to my new vision. This is the freedom I offer you tonight. The freedom to step out of the misunderstanding and into the light of truth. The truth that you are the power, you are the cause, and you are the glory. To fully understand the operation of the law of assumption, you must be willing to confront and ultimately discard the tyrant that rules the modern mind, which is the tyrant of rationality. We are raised to worship at the altar of logic. We are taught from childhood to be sensible, to weigh the pros and cons, to count the cost, and to never take a step unless the ground beneath us is visibly solid. We call this responsibility, but I call it a prison. Rationality is nothing more than the analysis of past limitations. It is a calculation based on what has already happened, and therefore it can never predict or allow for the miraculous. The reasoning mind is a wonderful servant for organizing facts, but it is a terrible master for creating a future. It looks at your bank account and tells you what you can afford. It looks at your medical records and tells you how long you have to live. It looks at your education and tells you what kind of job you can get. It is a machine of limitation. And if you listen to it, you will replicate your past over and over again until you die. Let me illustrate this principle with a story that is as practical as it is profound. It is the story of a friend of mine named Louise. I met her in this very city over 20 years ago. At the time, she was a beautiful young woman, about 30 years of age, working as a model. She was the picture of a responsible citizen. She was a devoted daughter who had taken on the burden of buying a small home for her elderly parents, and she was working tirelessly to pay off the mortgage. She lived by the rules of the world. She paid her taxes, she paid her debts, and she denied her own desires in the name of duty. But inside this responsible woman, there was a fire burning. She came to me one day with a confession that felt to her like a sin against logic. She said to me, "Neville, I've always dreamed of going to Paris. It is a burning desire in my heart. But when I look at my life, it seems impossible. I really do not have the money. I have just enough savings in the bank to go as a tourist and live in a modest way for 1 week. But even that seems stupid and reckless when I think that I am still paying off the mortgage on the house." Now look at her situation through the eyes of the world. The world would say she is right. The world would say it is irresponsible to spend your last savings on a frivolous trip when you have debt. The world would say, wait until you are older, wait until the house is paid off, wait until it is safe. But waiting is the song of the rational mind, and it is a funeral dirge for the spirit. Louise was standing at a crossroads between the safety of her history and the risk of her destiny. She asked me for advice, expecting me to be the voice of reason. She expected me to tell her to be patient and to save her money. But she came to the wrong man for that. I looked at her and I said, "You are asking the wrong person for advice, because I am not a rational person when it comes to the world. I do not go along with the reasoning mind. I am talking of an entirely different principle. I am speaking of imagination." I told her that imagination is Jesus Christ, and to me there is nothing but God. If you want me to give you a rational reason for going or not going, do not ask me, because I have none. Rationality deals with the surface of things. Imagination deals with the cause of things. I told her, if you really want to go and you have just enough for a quick 1-week trip, then go. Do not ask the mortgage for permission. Do not ask the future for permission. The desire to go to Paris is not a random accident. It is the voice of God within you, calling you to an appointment that your rational mind cannot see. When you have a deep burning desire, it is because the thing desired is already trying to reach you, but you block it with your logic. You block it with your how and your why and your but. I told her to step out on the water. I told her to trust the impulse of her soul over the calculations of her brain. She did not tell me what she decided in that moment, but the seed had been planted. She left my presence, and she made a decision that defied all logic. She took her savings, she bought the ticket, and she went to Paris. She stepped out of the boat. Now listen to what happened. If she had listened to reason, she would have stayed in New York, she would have paid her mortgage month by month, and she would have remained a struggling model with a dream. But because she rejected rationality and embraced imagination, the entire universe rearranged itself to meet her. On her second day in Paris, she went on a blind date. This was a chance meeting that rationality would call a coincidence, but which the awakened man calls a bridge of incidents. She met a man who was 23 years her senior. A rational mind would say he is too old. A rational mind would say he has too much baggage. He had been married 5 times before. Logic would scream that this is a bad bet. Logic would say he is unstable. But the spirit knows what the eyes cannot see. They fell in love. It was immediate, and it was profound. This man was not just anyone. He was a man of immense wealth, with factories in the United States and Europe and business interests all over the world. But more than his wealth, he was a man who had a void in his life that only Louise could fill. In his 5 previous marriages, he had never had a child. He was desperate for an heir. He divorced his 5th wife, married Louise, and they were blessed with a child. He went wild with joy over this offspring. He poured his fortune and his love into Louise and their child. Look at the transformation. One week she was a struggling model, worrying about a mortgage. The next, she was the wife of a multi-millionaire, living a life of luxury and freedom that she could not have rationally planned in 1,000 years. She came into a fortune that allowed her to pay off the mortgage with the stroke of a pen. She provided for her parents in ways she never dreamed possible. She traveled the world. She lived the life of a queen, and it all began because she dared to do a stupid thing. It all began because she rejected the sensible path and chose the imaginal path. If she had been rational, she would still be calculating her budget in New York. But because she was faithful to the vision, she became the master of her world. This story forces us to ask a terrifying question. How many miracles have we blocked because we were trying to be sensible? How many fortunes have we missed because we checked our bank account first? How many loves have we denied because we looked at the statistics of failure? Rationality is the great anesthesia. It dulls the pain of risk, but it also kills the joy of living. The reasoning mind thinks in straight lines. It thinks A leads to B leads to C. But God thinks in quantum leaps. God thinks A leads to Z instantly. When you operate from imagination, you are tapping into a non-linear power. You are tapping into a power that can bend time and space to fulfill a desire. You must understand that the world you see is a shadow world. When you try to make decisions based on the shadows, you are fighting a losing battle. The facts of your life are not fixed. They are fluid. They are only hard because you keep freezing them with your logical acceptance of them. Louise broke the ice. She decided that the fact of her debt was less real than the reality of her desire. This is the stance of the mystic. The mystic looks at the wall and sees a door. The rational man looks at the wall and stops walking. You must decide tonight which one you will be. Will you be the person who calculates their way to the grave, or will you be the person who imagines their way to the stars? I am not telling you to be reckless with your responsibilities in a foolish way. I am telling you that your highest responsibility is to the being within you. When you deny your deep desires because of money or fear, you are blaspheming the God within. You are telling God that He is too small to help you. You are telling God that the economy is more powerful than He is. This is the ultimate atheism. True faith is the rejection of the visible for the sake of the invisible. It is the willingness to walk in the direction of your dream, even when the road has not yet been paved. Louise walked on air until the ground appeared beneath her feet, and that ground was solid gold. So when you are faced with a decision and the rational mind starts its chatter, recognize it for what it is. It is the voice of the past. It is the voice of fear masquerading as wisdom. Do not argue with it. Just step over it. Say to your logical mind, I thank you for your concern, but I am following a different star. I am following the star of my own wonderful human imagination. And that star will never lead you into a ditch. It will lead you to the manger where your new life is waiting to be born. It will lead you to a destiny that your logic could never conceive of. Dare to be irrational. Dare to be divine. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, and the foolishness of God is wiser than men. Be foolish enough to believe in your dream, and you will be wise enough to live it. As we delve deeper into the mystery of how the imagination weaves the fabric of reality, we must confront a phenomenon that defies all biological and chronological logic. We have seen how Louise rejected rationality to find her fortune, but now we must explore how the imagination can override the laws of time and even the laws of nature itself. This brings us to the story of the second son. This is not merely a story about a birth, it is a revelation about the pre-existence of your desires. We tend to believe that we create a desire in the moment we think of it. We believe that a child begins at conception, or that a fortune begins when the work starts. But I tell you that the things you desire are already alive. They exist in a dimensionally larger world, waiting for the portal to open, so they can step into this shadow world. They have names, they have faces, and they have appointed hours. As the years passed and the first son, Larry, grew into a young man, the family life of Louise settled into a rhythm of prosperity. But in the invisible world, something else was stirring. When Larry was just a child, I had a vision that shook me to my core. In this vision, I was taken out of this world and lifted into a state of high spiritual clarity. In this state, I saw a little boy. He was not an infant, he was a lad of about 5 years old. He was handsome beyond measure, with a beauty that was not quite of this earth, yet he was solid and real. As I looked at this child, I felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. It was not the recognition of a stranger meeting a stranger, but the recognition of a soul meeting its source. The boy looked at me with eyes that held the wisdom of the ages, and he spoke words that would baffle the rational mind. He said to me, "I am your father." Now pause and consider the profundity of that statement. How can a child be the father of the man? In the world of spirit, the thing created often instructs the creator. The desire you hold transforms you. When you give birth to a dream, that dream turns around and reshapes your life. It fathers you into a new state of being. So this child was telling me that he was a creative force that would redefine who I was. I accepted this paradox in the vision, and I asked him a simple question. I said, "If I am your father and you are my father, when are you coming to earth to be my son?" I wanted to know when this spiritual reality would clothe itself in flesh. He looked at me with absolute precision and said, "On the 10th of November, I woke from that vision with the date burned into my mind. The 10th of November. Now you must understand the context. This vision occurred in late September. I turned to my wife the next morning and I said, "Darling, you know you are going to have a baby on the 10th of November. She looked at me with the compassionate skepticism that wives often reserve for their visionary husbands. She said, "Neville, I really believe all that you teach. I believe in the power of imagination. But after all, let us be reasonable. This is ridiculous. I am not even pregnant. It is late September. To have a child in November, I would have to be 7 months pregnant right now, and I assure you I am not. Biologically, it is impossible." She dismissed it as a hallucination. And from the standpoint of the shadow world, she was right. But from the standpoint of the real world, she was mistaken. That very night, I was giving a lecture in New York City. The hall was full, and in the crowd I saw Louise. I had not seen her in some time. She looked enormous. She was heavy with child and looked as though she could give birth at any moment. She was way out into the deep. I approached her after the lecture and I asked her the question that was burning in my heart. I asked her when she expected her child. She looked at me and said, "The doctor says the baby is due around early January." Now do the math. The doctor who relies on the evidence of the senses said January. The vision, which relies on the truth of God, said November. There was a discrepancy of 2 months. Then she added another detail that contradicted the vision. She said, "Joseph and I want a daughter. We are determined to have a girl. We already have our son Larry, and we do not want another boy. We have picked out the name for our daughter, and we are set on it." So here we have a conflict. The parents want a girl. The medical science says January. But the vision showed a boy, and the vision said November. Who is right? Is the shadow right, or is the imagination right? I looked at her with the certainty that can only come from having seen the truth, and I said, "Louise, you are not going to have a daughter. You are going to have a son. And he will not be born in January. He will be born on the 10th of November. And may I tell you his name? His name is Neville Mark, because that is what he told me." She laughed it off. She thought I was joking. She thought I was trying to impose my name on her child. But I was not imposing anything. I was simply reporting what I had seen in the eternal world. The boy had told me his name was Neville Mark. He had told me his birthday was the 10th of November. I was merely the messenger of a decree that had already been signed in heaven. She went home, and I am sure she and her husband joked about the crazy mystic who thinks he knows more than the obstetrician. But the 10th of November approached, and as it approached, the forces of life began to accelerate. The slow timeline of the doctor began to collapse. On the morning of the 10th of November, exactly as the boy had prophesied, the labor began. It did not wait for January. It did not ask for permission from the calendar. The child was ready to make his entrance. And when the child was born, it was not the daughter they had planned for. It was a son. It was the handsome lad I had seen in my vision. And in that moment of awe and recognition, Louise remembered my words. She remembered the impossible prediction, and she knew that this child had named himself. She could not call him anything else. She named him Neville Mark. This story is not just an anecdote about a birthday. It is a testament to the fact that we are all entangled in a divine drama that precedes our physical birth. That boy existed before he was conceived. He had an identity. He had a name. He had a destiny. And he used my imagination as a channel to announce his arrival because his physical parents were too caught up in their preferences for a girl to hear his voice. I was the receiver of the broadcast, but Louise was the vessel of the birth. This shows us that we are all one. There is only one imagination. I can imagine for you, and you can imagine for me, because at the deepest level we are the same being. It also teaches us a profound lesson about time. We worry so much about time. We worry that we are running out of it, or that our desires are taking too long. But the vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it will flower. If it be long, then wait for it is sure, and it will not be late. The child came on the 10th of November, not the 9th, not the 11th. The timing was precise to the day. This implies that your desire, whether it is for a job or a healing or a relationship, has a scheduled arrival time. You do not need to force it. You do not need to panic. It is already on the schedule of the universe. The doctor said January because the doctor looks at the shadows. The vision said November because the vision looks at the cause. When you are told that something is impossible, look at this story. When the experts tell you that the timeline is too short, look at this story. When your own family tells you that you are deluding yourself, look at this story. My own wife did not believe me. Louise did not believe me. The doctor certainly would not have believed me. But the truth did not require their belief to manifest. It only required one person to stand in the conviction of the knowing. I knew what I had seen. And because I stood firm in that knowledge, the world had to conform to it. This prophecy of the sun is a metaphor for every desire you hold in your heart. Your desire is the sun. It is the child of your imagination. It may seem to be waiting in the future. It may seem impossible to birth right now. The world may tell you it will take years. But if you have seen it in your mind's eye, if you have felt the reality of it, then it has an appointment with you. It will bypass the natural laws. It will bypass the medical predictions. It will bypass the economic forecasts. It will come on its appointed day, and it will bear the name you have given it. Do not let the rational world talk you out of your divine appointment. Trust the vision. For the vision is the only reality, and the world of facts is merely the after-image of the fire that burns within you. We move now from the joyful heights of prophecy to the dark valley of the shadow of death. It is easy to believe in the power of imagination when the sun is shining and the harvest is plentiful. It is easy to say, I am the master of my fate, when the bank account is full and the body is healthy. But the true test of the law does not come in the daylight. It comes in the midnight hour. It comes when the structure of your life collapses and you are left standing in the rubble with nothing but your naked consciousness. We must look at the story of Louise not just as a tale of gaining wealth, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the ultimate loss. The years following the birth of Neville Mark were years of golden prosperity for the family. The business expanded, the wealth accumulated, and the children grew in grace and stature. The first son, Larry, had grown into a magnificent young man. He was 18 years old, and he was the image of his father. He was the pride of Louise's heart, the first fruit of her new life. They sent him off to college in England to complete his education. Life seemed perfect. The shadow world was painting a beautiful picture. But we must never forget that the shadow world is unstable. It is a world of constant change and decay. If you place your trust in the shadows, you will eventually be heartbroken because shadows shift and fade with the setting of the sun. Then came the morning that every parent dreads. It was a Saturday morning in New York City. The family was asleep in their apartment high above Central Park. The city was quiet. There was no sign in the heavens that the world was about to end. But at 6:15 in the morning, Louise woke up with a start. She felt a jolt go through her body, a sudden shock that forced her out of sleep. She looked at the clock and wondered why she was awake. Her husband Joseph was already up, as was his habit, but the rest of the house was silent. And then the phone rang. That shrill mechanical sound that can change a destiny in an instant. It was a call from London. When Louise heard the operator say London, calling, her heart leaped. She thought it was Larry calling home. She expected to hear his voice full of life and stories about school. But instead she heard the grave voice of the headmaster. He did not mince words. He did not try to soften the blow, because there is no way to soften a hammer strike. He said, "I am sorry to tell you, Mrs. Burley, but Larry is dead. He had been in an automobile accident. There were 5 boys in the car. It was a sudden, violent crash. And in the strange and cruel calculus of the physical world, 4 of the boys survived with minor injuries. Only 1 was taken. Only Larry was killed." Louise told me later that she did not even feel the ground beneath her feet. The world simply dissolved. The walls of her luxury apartment, the view of the park, the security of her wealth, all of it became instantly meaningless. This is the fragility of the shadow world. You can spend a lifetime building a fortress of security, but one phone call can breach the walls. She and Joseph and Neville Mark left immediately for London. They went through the gruesome mechanical motions of death. They identified the body. They arranged for the cremation. They gathered the ashes of their beautiful boy, and they brought him back to New York. They scattered his ashes in Central Park around a favorite tree, and then the silence descended. Louise went into a state of shock that terrified those around her. It was not just grief. Grief is a natural process of weeping and mourning. This was something else. This was a total withdrawal of the soul from the body. She sat in her room for 2 months and stared at the wall. She was catatonic. She refused to eat. She refused to speak. She refused to acknowledge the presence of the living. She was not here. She was searching. She was wandering through the corridors of her mind, looking for the door that Larry had walked through. Her husband Joseph was already up, as was his habit, but the rest of the house was silent. And then the phone rang. I told him to wait. I told him he did not know the strength of this woman. She was not insane. She was determined. This brings us to the failure of the world. In her time of crisis, Louise turned to the pillars of society for support, and they all crumbled. She turned to religion. The priests and the ministers came with their books and their platitudes. They told her it was God's will. They told her that Larry was in a better place. They told her to have faith. But these were just words. Empty, hollow words that echoed in the cavern of her loss. They could not give her Larry. They could only give her theories about Larry. She did not want a theory. She wanted her son. She turned to philosophy. She read the great thinkers who wrote about the immortality of the soul and the stoic acceptance of death. But philosophy is cold comfort when your arms are empty. The intellect cannot heal the heart. The reasoning mind cannot explain away the finality of death. She turned to her friends and society. They tried to distract her. They said, "You still have your husband. You still have your other son. You have your wealth. You should be grateful for what remains." But this is the logic of the marketplace applied to the soul. You cannot balance the ledger of love. You cannot say that because you have one son left, the loss of the other is acceptable. To a mother, the loss of a child is the loss of a universe. The world tried to patch her up. It tried to sedate her. It tried to force her to function again in the machine of society. But she refused. She realized that the world had nothing to offer her. The shadow world had failed. Its money was useless. Its status was useless. Its explanations were useless. She realized that if there was any answer to be found, it could not be found on the outside. She had to go where the world could not follow. She said to me later, "Neville, my religion failed me, my philosophies failed me, the doctors failed me. I was alone in a darkness that had no bottom." And in that darkness she remembered one thing. She remembered the law. She remembered what I had taught her night after night. I had taught her that all things exist in the human imagination. I had taught her that imagination is God, and that God is the God of the living, not the dead. She grabbed onto this truth like a drowning woman grabbing a lifeline. She reasoned with herself with a logic that transcended the world. She said, "If Neville is right, then Larry is not dead. He has only departed from this section of time and space. If all things exist in the imagination, then Larry must exist in my imagination. And if he exists there, he is real. He is not a memory. He is a living reality. I do not want to remember him. I want to see him. I want to touch him. I want to prove that he survived." She set herself a goal that would terrify a lesser soul. She determined that she would break the barrier between the worlds. She would use the power of her mind not to escape reality, but to find the ultimate reality. This is the purpose of the tragedy in her life. It stripped away all the supports that were not real. As long as we have the comforts of the world, we often sleep spiritually. We rely on our money and our family and our routine to give us a sense of meaning. But when those are stripped away, we are forced to find the only thing that cannot be taken away. We are forced to find the I am. Louise was forced into the furnace of affliction. She had to decide whether the world of Caesar was the ultimate truth or whether the world of imagination was the ultimate truth. The car accident was a brutal fact. The ashes in the park were a brutal fact. The silence of the phone was a brutal fact. The world screamed at her, "He is dead. He is gone. You will never see him again." But there was a whisper inside her that said, "No. The facts are shadows. The truth is hidden. Seek and you shall find." She rejected the verdict of the world. She rejected the diagnosis of the doctors who called her shock a mental illness. It was not illness. It was a spiritual siege. She was besieging the gates of heaven. She was demanding that the Creator reveal the creation. She was exercising the divine right of a creator to know her creation. She shut the door on the world, not because she hated the world, but because the world was too noisy to hear the voice of her Son. She had to become absolutely still. She had to reach a vibration of intensity that burned away the veil. This is where we must all eventually arrive. We must come to the point where the world fails us, where money cannot solve the problem, where medicine cannot cure the disease, where human logic cannot find a way out. It is in this place of total failure that the door to the divine opens. Because when you have nothing left but God, you realize that God is enough. Louise was about to prove that the human imagination is not just a toy for daydreaming, but the very power that conquers death. She was about to perform an act of resurrection. But first she had to endure the crucifixion of her human hopes. She had to die to the world so she could live to the Spirit. And so she sat in her chair day after day, waiting for the power to rise, waiting for the evidence of things not seen, waiting for the shadow to give way to the light. Before we witness the miracle that defied death itself, I ask you to pause. If you have ever felt the world fail you, if you have ever stood in the darkness looking for a way out, know that you have found your sanctuary here. We are a community of seekers who refuse to accept the verdict of the shadows. If you are ready to walk the path of the impossible, signal your intent by liking this video. And if you have not yet joined us, press the subscribe button for the Master the Law of Assumption channel now. By doing so, you are not just watching a video, you are stepping into a circle of power. Now, let us enter the room where the dead return to life. We have walked with Louise through the valley of the shadow of death, and now we arrive at the mountaintop of transfiguration. This is the moment where the veil between the worlds is torn in two. It is the moment where the human imagination proves itself to be the conqueror of the grave. 2 months had passed since the accident. 2 months of silence. 2 months of a grief so heavy it paralyzed the body and froze the mind. Louise lay on her bed in the apartment on the 33rd floor. It was the early hours of the morning, a time when the city sleeps and the spiritual atmosphere is thin. She was not asleep, but she was not fully awake to this world either. She was in a state of deep, profound receptivity. She was waiting on the Lord not as a passive beggar, but as a determined hunter of truth. She had rejected the comfort of the world, and now she was demanding the comfort of the Spirit. Suddenly she felt a change in the atmosphere of the room. It began not on the outside, but on the inside. She described it as a surging, it was a rhythmic pulse of power rising from the depths of her own being. It was surging and surging like a tide coming in that could not be held back. This was the awakening of the creative power of God within her. It was the energy that created the galaxies rising in the heart of a grieving mother. She did not fight it. She surrendered to it. And as this power reached its crescendo, she opened her spiritual eyes, and she saw the impossible become the inevitable. There in the corner of her bedroom stood a large, comfortable chair, and sitting on the arm of that chair was Larry. This was not a memory. Memories are hazy and flat. This was not a ghost. Ghosts are transparent and fleeting. This was Larry. He was solid. He was three-dimensional. He was radiating life. He was sitting there with the casual ease of a young man who is completely at home. He looked exactly as he did in the prime of his youth, but there was a luminosity about him that defied description. Louise looked at him, and her rational mind was silenced forever. She knew in that instant that the report from London was a lie. She knew that the ashes in Central Park were just dust. The reality was sitting on the chair. In this heightened state of consciousness, Louise realized that she was not bound by her physical body lying on the bed. She said to herself, "If Larry is there, I can be there too." And with the effortless movement of the imagination, she stepped out of her physical frame. She walked over to the chair and she sat down next to him. She sat on the seat of the chair while he perched on the arm. She reached out her hand and she touched him. Listen closely to this detail because it is the key to the entire mystery. She touched his face. She felt the texture of his skin. She said it was like velvet. It was softer and more alive than any skin she had ever touched in the physical world. She felt the warmth of his body. She felt the solidity of his shoulder. This was sense perception raised to the nth degree of reality. She was not imagining him in the sense of daydreaming, she was experiencing him. Then she performed another act of creative power. She thought of her other son, Neville Mark, who was asleep in his own room down the hall. In an instant, he was there. He appeared on the other arm of the chair. So there they were, the three of them forming a trinity of love in a dimension that death cannot touch. Louise sat in the middle, flanked by her two sons. One whom the world called dead, and one whom the world called alive. But in that room there was no death. There was only life. They were all equally real. They were all equally solid. This proves that we are not separated by distance or by death. We are only separated by the frequency of our consciousness. When you tune into the right frequency, those you have lost are right there beside you. Then the communication began. It was not a conversation of clumsy words. Words are too slow for the spirit. It was a direct transmission of thought and feeling. Larry looked at his mother with eyes full of infinite love and understanding. He spoke to her mind. He said, "Mother, I did not want to hurt you." Ponder that statement. He was not apologizing for dying. He was apologizing for the pain his departure had caused her. He was showing her that his death was not an accident from his perspective. It was a departure he had accepted, but he grieved for her grief. He wanted her to know that he was fine, that he was whole, and that the tragedy was only a tragedy from her side of the veil. From his side, it was simply a stepping through a door. The communion was perfect. It was a fusion of souls. Louise felt a joy that erased every moment of the last 2 months. The despair that had racked her body was washed away by the presence of her son. She saw that he was beautiful. She said, "I have never seen Larry so beautiful." His face was radiant. It was the face of a soul that has been liberated from the limitations of the flesh, but has retained its individuality. He was not absorbed into a nameless light. He was still Larry. He was still her son. But he was Larry glorified. He was Larry awakened. Then Louise made a decision to bridge the gap completely. She wanted her husband to share in this glory. She turned to Neville Mark in the vision and said, "Neville, go and get Daddy. Go tell him to come and see Larry." She wanted Joseph walk in from the living room and see his son alive. She wanted to prove to the world that death is a lie. Neville Mark got up from the arm of the chair and started walking toward the door to get his father. But here we encounter the limitations of the two worlds merging. As Neville Mark moved to bring the father into the vision, the tension became too great. The vibration of the shadow world, where the father was reading the paper, could not yet merge with the vibration of the real world, where the son was living. Something broke. It was like a rubber band snapping. The vision faded. The room returned to its normal appearance. Larry was gone from the chair. Neville Mark was back in his bed. And Louise found herself back in her body, lying on the bed. But something had fundamentally changed. The woman who lay down on that bed was a broken shell of a person racked with physical pain and spiritual despair. The woman who rose from that bed was healed. Instantly, completely, permanently. The mysterious pain that no doctor could diagnose was gone. It never returned. The crushing weight of grief was lifted. She did not need faith anymore because she had knowledge. She did not need to hope that Larry survived. She knew he survived. She had touched him. She had felt his velvet skin. She had heard his voice. The experience was more real to her than the bed she was lying on. She got up and walked into the living room. There sat Joseph reading the morning paper just as he always did. He was surrounded by the artifacts of the shadow world. The news of the day, the coffee cup, the ticking clock. Louise looked at him and she saw the truth. She told him what had happened. She told him, "I saw Larry. I touched him. He is alive." But as she spoke to Joseph, she realized that Joseph and the room and the paper were less real than what she had just experienced. She said he was like a shadow, a talking shadow. She went out that day to do her shopping. She walked down the busy streets of New York City. She saw the crowds of people rushing to work. She saw the tall buildings. She saw the traffic. And to her awakened eyes, it was all a play of shadows. Everyone she passed was a talking shadow. They thought they were real. They thought their problems were real. But she knew they were just projections on a screen. She had been behind the screen. She had met the projectionist. She had touched the reality that casts the shadows. This experience of Louise is not just a ghost story. It is a demonstration of the law of reversibility. If all things exist in the imagination, then we can call them forth. She did not hallucinate Larry. She resurrected him in her consciousness. She accessed the dimension where Larry still exists. You see, death is not the end of life. It is a change of worlds. Larry did not cease to be. He simply changed his address. He moved from the three-dimensional world to the four-dimensional world. But because Louise had the key of imagination, she was able to unlock the door and visit him in his new home. This proves that love is the strongest force in the universe. Her love for her son, coupled with her intense refusal to accept his death, created the bridge. She concentrated all her energy, all her focus on one single point. I must know he survived. And because she would not take no for an answer, the universe yielded to her demand. It parted the curtain. This is available to all of us. We may not all have the intensity of Louise to manifest a visual apparition, but we all have the capacity to meet our loved ones in the silence of the soul. We can talk to them. We can hear them. We can feel their presence. They are not gone. They are just a thought away. Louise was cured because the cause of her disease was removed. Her disease was grief and the belief in loss. Once she realized there was no loss, the disease had no foundation to stand on, and it vanished. This teaches us that all sickness originates in the mind and in the emotions. When we heal the belief, we heal the body. Louise proved that the eternal body of man is the imagination. In that body we are young. In that body we are whole. In that body we are together forever. She touched the velvet skin of eternity, and she was never the same again. And tonight she invites you to touch it too. To close your eyes to the shadows and open them to the real. To know that death is nothing but a waking from a weary dream. After the vision broke and Louise found herself back in her physical body lying on the bed, she rose and walked into the living room. It was a morning like any other morning in the city of New York. The sun was coming through the window. The traffic was humming on the street below, and there sat her husband Joseph. He was sitting in his usual chair reading the morning paper just as he had done for 40 years. He looked up at her and he spoke. To the eyes of a sleeping man, he was a solid physical reality. But Louise had just returned from the mountaintop. She had just touched the velvet skin of the eternal. She had just seen the vibrancy of life that makes this physical world look like a faded photograph. As she looked at Joseph and then looked out the window at the bustling city, she made a statement that defines the very essence of this teaching. She said he was only a shadow that talked. She went out shopping that day, and as she walked down Fifth Avenue, she looked at the people rushing by. She saw the wealthy and the poor, the happy and the sad, and she saw them all as talking shadows. This was not a hallucination, and it was not a detachment from sanity. It was the ultimate sanity. It was the realization that the world of objects and facts is not the primary reality. It is a secondary reality. It is a screen upon which the invisible power of imagination projects its dramas. We are taught to believe that the hard, solid things we touch are the cause of our experience. We think the job causes the wealth. We think the medicine causes the health. We think the person causes the love. But Louise saw the truth. These things are merely the shadows cast by the invisible light of consciousness. Understanding the shadow world is the key to your freedom. A shadow, by definition, has no life of its own. It has no power to move itself. It has no power to change itself. A shadow is completely enslaved to the object that casts it. If you stand in the sun and you cast a shadow on the ground, that shadow cannot decide to jump or dance or walk away. It must do exactly what you do. It is a slave to your movement. Now, apply this to your life. The circumstances of your life are the shadows. Your bank account is a shadow. Your relationship status is a shadow. Your health is a shadow. They have no independent power to hurt you or help you. They are simply reflecting the movements of your own inner being. They are slaves to your imagination. The tragedy of human existence is that we have forgotten this relationship. We have become idolaters of the shadow. We give the shadow power. We fear the shadow. We fight the shadow. Imagine a man who sees a terrifying shadow of a monster on the wall. He draws his sword and attacks the wall. He screams at the wall. He tries to scrub the shadow off the wall. He exhausts himself fighting the darkness. But he never turns around to see that the monster is just a small toy he is holding in front of a light. If he would just put down the toy, the monster would vanish. You are that man. You are fighting the shadows of poverty and sickness and loneliness. You are trying to change the world by manipulating the shadows. You work harder, you struggle, you argue, you manipulate. And sometimes the shadow changes for a moment, but then it snaps back. Why? Because you have not put down the toy. You have not changed the image in your mind. You might say to me, Neville, this world feels very real. If I cut myself, I bleed. If I fall, I break a bone. If I do not pay my bills, I get evicted. How can you call this a shadow? I am not saying it is a hallucination that does not have consequences. I am saying it is a derivative reality. It is an effect, not a cause. Yes, if you cut the shadow, it bleeds because the shadow has density. But it is still a shadow because it cannot originate action. It can only reflect action. The world is a feedback mechanism. It is a mirror. When you look in a mirror and you see a sad face, you do not try to force the reflection to smile. You do not paint a smile on the glass. You smile, and the mirror has no choice. It must reflect the smile. The world is under compulsion to manifest what you are conscious of being. It has no free will of its own. Louise saw Joseph as a talking shadow because she realized he was playing a part in the script she had written. Everyone in your life is a talking shadow. They are whispering to you the secrets of your own assumptions. If someone is being rude to you, they are a shadow reflecting your own assumption of unworthiness. If someone is generous to you, they are a shadow reflecting your assumption of abundance. Do not blame the shadow. Do not argue with the shadow. If you do not like the script, change the author. You are the author. The shadow world is a vast, complex stage play, and you are the writer, the director, and the lead actor. The other people are just supporting cast members who have agreed to play the roles you assign to them. This realization is both terrifying and liberating. It is terrifying because it removes all your excuses. You can no longer blame your parents or the economy or the government for your life. If the world is a shadow, then you are the only cause. But it is liberating because it means you are never a victim. You are the operant power. You can change the entire landscape of your life without lifting a finger in the physical world. You can change it by changing the light within you. Your consciousness is the light. The slide in the projector is your concept of self. If you change the slide from I am poor to I am wealthy, the shadow on the screen of space must change. It may take a moment for the film to advance, that is, the time lag we spoke of, but the change is inevitable. When Louise went shopping, she saw the world as it truly is. A temporary arrangement of energy held in place by belief. We look at a building and we think it is solid stone that will last forever. But to the awakened eye, it is just a thought that has hardened. If the collective imagination withdrew its support from that building, it would crumble. Empires have risen and fallen, civilizations have come and gone. They were all just shadows cast by the collective imagination of their times. The only thing that endures is the imagination itself. The immortal man. That is who you are. You are the being who stands before the light. You are not the shadow on the wall. So how do we live in this shadow world? We live in it, but not of it. We interact with the shadows. We pay our taxes to the shadows. We shake hands with the shadows. We love the shadows, but we never give them authority over us. We never let the shadow tell us who we are. If the shadow says you are sick, we smile and say, that is an old report. I am changing the slide. If the shadow says you are broke, we say, that is a temporary illusion. I am wealthy. We walk through the world with a dual consciousness. We keep one foot in the world of Caesar, obeying the traffic lights and paying the rent. But we keep our other foot in the world of God, where we are kings and queens reigning over our own creation. This shift in perspective is what Jesus meant when he said, my kingdom is not of this world. He was not speaking of a place in the clouds. He was saying, my realm of cause is not in the shadow world. My power comes from within. When Pilate told Jesus, do you not know I have the power to crucify you? Jesus replied, you would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above. Pilate was a shadow, a powerful shadow with an army, but still a shadow. Jesus knew that Pilate could only do what the drama of Scripture demanded. He gave the shadow no power other than what he allowed. You must reach that level of mastery. You must look at your boss, your landlord, your banker, and realize they have no power over you unless you give it to them from within. Tonight, I invite you to step back from the screen. Stop trying to fix the movie by shouting at the screen. Come back to the projection booth. Come back to the silence of your own heart. Look at the shadows of your life, not with fear, but with the curiosity of a master artist. Ask yourself, what must I be imagining to create this shadow? And if you do not like the answer, change the imagination. Louise proved it. She changed the shadow of death into the reality of life. She changed the shadow of pain into the reality of health. She changed the shadow of poverty into the reality of fortune. She did it by ignoring the shadows and going to the source. You have the same source within you. It is your own wonderful human imagination. Trust it, use it, and watch the shadows dance to your tune. You might say to me, Neville, this talk of resurrection and visions is beautiful, but I live in a practical world. I have a business to run. I have a payroll to meet. I have rent to pay. Can this power of imagination operate in the cold, hard world of commerce? Can it stand up against the statistics of the economy and the ruthlessness of the market? I tell you that the principles of imagination are most easily proved in the world of business, because business is nothing more than the exchange of energy and ideas. There is a scientific principle that governs this, which I call the law of reversibility. In physics, we know that if a physical cause can produce a psychological effect, then a psychological cause can produce a physical effect. If having $1 million makes you feel secure, then feeling secure must produce the $1 million. If a successful business makes you feel confident, then assuming the feeling of confidence must produce the successful business. The energy flows both ways. Most men only know the first way. They wait for the event to change their feeling. The master uses the feeling to change the event. Let us return to the story of Louise to see this law in action. Louise was not just a mystic living in a tower. She was the wife of a very wealthy and active businessman. Her husband owned factories in New York, in Puerto Rico, in Paris, and in London. He employed hundreds of people. His overhead was enormous. Their personal life was situated in the heart of New York City in a prestigious apartment on the 33rd floor, and his business headquarters was located on 57th Street between 5th Avenue and Madison Avenue. This is one of the most expensive strips of real estate on the planet. He was paying a fortune in rent every year for a long, narrow floor that was hardly adequate for his needs. but it was the address that mattered in his industry. He was entrenched in the shadow world of prestige and high costs. Then came the disruption. The shadow world is never stable. He received a notice that the building had been purchased by IBM. The International Business Machines Corporation bought the entire structure to demolish it and build a massive headquarters for themselves. All tenants were given notice to vacate. This sent her husband into a tailspin of panic. He was a rational businessman, and his rationality told him he was in trouble. He looked at the real estate market and he saw scarcity. He looked at his budget and he saw limitation. He came home to Louise and began to list the reasons why this was a disaster. He said, "There is no space available in this area. To move will cost a fortune. We will lose our standing if we leave this district." He was worshipping the facts. He was bowing down to the god of statistics. Louise stopped him. She looked at this man who was a captain of industry, and she took command. She said to him, "Don't tell me what you don't want. Don't tell me what can't be done. I am not interested in the market report. I am not interested in what the brokers say. Tell me what you want." This is the question that cuts through the fog of confusion. Most people know exactly what they are afraid of, but they have a very vague idea of what they desire. Clarity is the first step of creation. She forced him to be specific. She forced him to construct a definite mold for the imagination to fill. He said, "All right, I want a building on 57th Street, not between 5th and Madison, where we are now, but between 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue. I want it to be affordable. And while we are at it, I want to change our living situation. We have 18 months left on the lease of our apartment. We are paying $1,250 a month, which was a significant sum in those days. I want to move out of this lease without penalty. I want to find a new apartment that is just as high up. I want it on the 30th floor or higher because I need the view. And I want to pay half of what we are paying now." Now listen to the demands he made. To the rational mind, they were absurd. He wanted a prime commercial location in a market with zero vacancy. He wanted to break a legal lease without penalty. And he wanted a luxury penthouse for half the market price. A real estate agent would have laughed in his face. A banker would have shown him the door. But Louise did not laugh. She did not consult the classified ads. She did not call a broker. She consulted the Father within. She knew the law of reversibility. If the possession of these things would produce a feeling of satisfaction, then the feeling of satisfaction would produce these things. She went into the silence. She constructed a scene in her mind that implied all these things were true. She did not worry about how the lease would be broken. She did not worry about who would rent the old space. She simply assumed the state of having moved. She slept in the feeling of the new reality. She walked through the streets of New York, not as a woman looking for a building, but as a woman who had found one. She appropriated the reality inwardly, before there was a shred of evidence outwardly. She applied the same intensity that she used to resurrect her son to the problem of bricks and mortar. To her, there was no difference. A lost son or a lost building are both just states of consciousness that need to be retrieved. And what happened? The shadow world, which seemed so hard and unyielding, began to melt like wax before the fire of her imagination. Her husband found a building at number 41 West 57th Street. It was exactly where he wanted it, between 5th and 6th Avenue. It was an 8-story building. It was not listed for sale. It was not on the market, but because they had entered the state of ownership, the hidden things were revealed. They secured the building. But what about the apartment lease? They had 18 months left on a contract that cost $1,250 a month. You cannot just walk away from that kind of debt. While Louise was in the process of mentally moving, a stranger appeared. A man came out of nowhere and said, "I understand you might be leaving. I would like to take over your lease. I will pay the full rent of $1,250 and I will take it immediately." The problem that kept her husband awake at night was solved by a stranger who walked in off the street. This is how the bridge of incidents works. You do not have to find the buyer. The buyer finds you. You do not have to force the solution. The solution is drawn to you by the law of affinity. And finally, the new apartment. They found a place right next door to their new business on 57th Street. It was on the 30th floor, just as he requested. It had the view, it had the luxury, and the rent was $600 a month, less than half of what they were paying before. Everything he asked for, down to the specific street numbers and dollar amounts, was delivered. The husband who believed in facts was saved by the wife who believed in truth. This story proves that the law of imagination is not just for spiritual healing or emotional comfort. It is for the marketplace. It is for the boardroom. Business is nothing more than the projection of the consciousness of the person running it. If you are running your business from a state of fear and scarcity, you will manifest bad markets, difficult clients, and shrinking margins. You will say, "It is the economy," but I say, "It is you. You are the recession. You are the boom." The market is a shadow. It reflects your inner stability or your inner chaos. Many of you are holding back from your dreams because you think the external conditions are wrong. You say, "I cannot start a business now, there is too much competition." Or, "I cannot ask for a raise now, the company is cutting back." You are thinking like Joseph. You are listing the reasons why IBM is taking your building. You need to think like Louise. You need to realize that the rules of the world are suspended for the person who knows who they are. There is always a building that is not for sale until you want it. There is always a client who is not looking until you appear. There is always a way where there is no way. The law of reversibility is the secret weapon of the mystic in business. If you want to be successful, assume the feeling of success. Do not wait for the profits to justify the feeling. Generate the feeling to produce the profits. Walk into your office tomorrow as if you own the industry. Make your decisions from the premise that you cannot fail. When you negotiate, do not negotiate from weakness. Negotiate from the inevitable victory that you have already seen in your mind. People will feel your authority. They will not know why, but they will respect you. They will trust you. They will want to do business with you. Because you are vibrating at the frequency of the solution, not the problem. Louise proved that you can have it all. You can have the spiritual depth to conquer death and the practical power to conquer the economy. There is no division between the holy and the secular. Your business is a holy activity because it is an expression of God's creative power. Money is spiritual energy. Success is spiritual expansion. Do not be ashamed of wanting to succeed. Do not be ashamed of wanting the penthouse or the building. These desires are the fuel that drives you to test your imagination. And when you prove that you can manifest a building, you will build the faith to manifest greater things. So tonight I challenge you to look at your financial life. Where have you accepted limitation as a fact? Where have you allowed the statistics of the world to dictate your boundaries? Reject the rationality. Reject the fear. Define exactly what you want. Be specific. Do not just say, "I want more money." Say, "I want this specific role with this specific income, living in this specific way." Construct the scene. Enter into it. Feel the relief of having it. And then watch the world of shadows rearrange itself to give you the kingdom. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, and that includes the business on 57th Street. We have journeyed together through the stories of miraculous fortunes. We have analyzed the mechanics of the shadow world, and we have unveiled the divine identity of the king hiding behind the mask of the skin. But now we arrive at the most critical moment of our gathering. This is the moment of decision. It is one thing to sit comfortably and hear these truths and nod your head in agreement. It is an entirely different thing to rise up and apply them. There is a great danger in listening to truth without acting on it. It becomes a kind of spiritual entertainment. You can feel good for an hour hearing about the power of imagination and the victories of others, but if you walk out that door and return to your old reactions and your old fears and your old conversations, then you have wasted your time. The purpose of this teaching is not to comfort you in your sleep. The purpose is to wake you up. I challenge you tonight to look closely at the intensity of the woman I told you about. Louise, I have never met anyone more intense than that woman. When she wanted to go to Paris, she did not just wish for it, she went physically and mentally. When she wanted to know her son survived, she did not just hope, she besieged the gates of heaven until they opened. When she wanted a building, she did not listen to the market report or the brokers. She defined her own reality and forced the world to mold to it. The question you must ask yourself tonight is this: are you willing to be that intense? Are you willing to be that unreasonable? The scripture tells us that the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. This is not physical violence. It is the violence of a focused mind that refuses to accept no for an answer. It is the brazen impudence to stand before the hard facts of life and deny their authority over you. You might say to me, Neville, I am not like Louise. I do not have her strength of will. I am tired. I am beaten down by life. But I tell you that you do have her strength. You have the exact same imagination. You have the exact same Father within you. The only difference is that she focused her power like a laser beam, while you are scattering yours like a broken light bulb. You are imagining all day long. You are never not imagining, but you are using this immense power to imagine what you do not want. You are imagining arguments with your boss. You are imagining the failure of your health. You are imagining the emptiness of your bank account. You have the intensity, but you are using it in reverse. I am calling you tonight to take the reins of this wild horse called imagination and steer it. Stop letting it run wild into the ditch of your fears. Direct it with a master's hand toward the mountain of your desire. So how do you do this? How do you apply this tonight in a practical way that brings results? It starts with a radical act of selection. You must decide what you want. And this is where most people fail. They do not know what they want. They want better or they want more, but they are vague. The universe cannot answer a vague request. You must be as specific as Louise was with her building. She wanted a specific street, a specific floor, and a specific price. You must define your aim. Do you want health? Do you want freedom from debt? Do you want a specific relationship? Name it. Define it. Construct a scene in your mind that implies the fulfillment of that desire. It must be a scene where you are the actor, not the spectator. This is the crucial distinction. Do not watch yourself getting the job from a distance. Feel yourself shaking the hand of your new boss. Feel the texture of his hand. Hear the tone of his voice. Do not watch yourself being healthy. Feel the energy coursing through your veins. Feel the joy of movement. You must be in the picture. And here is the secret that Louise discovered, which is the key to the kingdom. You must lose yourself in the act. When she sat in that chair with her sons, she was not thinking about the chair in her room. She was not thinking about the traffic outside. She was so absorbed in the reality of her son that the physical world faded away. You must become so possessed by your vision that for a moment you forget you are sitting in a chair in your living room. You must give your imaginary act all the tones of reality. Smell the air of your new home. Touch the furniture. Hear the voices of your friends congratulating you. Make it so real that when you open your eyes, you are shocked to find that you are still here. That shock is good. That shock means you successfully moved. You traveled in consciousness. You went to the place prepared for you and you occupied it. And once you have done this, once you have impregnated the subconscious with the reality of your wish, there is a final step that is often the hardest for the rational mind. You must drop it. This does not mean you stop wanting it. It means you stop worrying about it. You stop checking to see if it is growing. When a farmer plants a seed, he does not dig it up every morning to see if it has roots. If he did that, he would kill the seed. He trusts the soil. He knows the soil has the wisdom to break the shell and push the sprout toward the sun. Your subconscious mind is the soil. It knows how to bring the seed to harvest. It has ways and means that you know not of. If you keep worrying about how it will happen, you are digging up the seed. You are interfering with the gestation. You must have the confidence to walk away and let the universe do its work. The world calls the objective facts reality, and it calls your imagination a dream. I am telling you to reverse that. The home you desire is the reality. The lack of it is the dream. The health you claim is the reality. The sickness is the shadow. You must walk through this world with a secret knowledge. You are like a spy in enemy territory. The enemy is limitation. You appear to be one of them. You appear to be subject to their laws. You pay your bills and you walk the streets. But in your pocket you hold the codes to the kingdom. You know that at any moment you can change the situation by changing the code. You are in the world but not of it. You are playing the game of life, but you are playing with loaded dice, because you know the outcome. This call to awaken is a call to total responsibility. You can no longer play the victim. You can no longer look at the sky and say, "Why did God do this to me?" You are the operant power. You did it to yourself. That is a heavy burden to accept, but it is also the only path to absolute freedom. Because if you did it, you can undo it. If you created the storm, you can speak the word and calm the sea. There is no other God. There is no other power. Stop looking for a savior to come on a cloud. The savior is sitting in your chair right now. The savior is your own wonderful human imagination. Rise up and use it. I want you to be like the little girl Mello. She said she came to earth to do an errand, and the errand was to see God. That is your errand too. You are here to find God, but you will not find him in a cathedral. You will not find him in a book. You will find him in the exercise of your own creative power. Every time you imagine a state and bring it to pass, you have seen God. You have seen his back. You have seen his power in action. Do not let another day go by living in the shadows. Do not let another night go by falling asleep in frustration. Tonight, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Sleep in the state of the king, and wake up to a world that has no choice but to reflect your glory. The time for theory is over. The time for action is now. You have the tools. You have the map. You have the example. The only variable left is your own will. Will you dare to believe in the reality of your imagination? Will you dare to ignore the evidence of your senses? Will you dare to be as intense as Louise? The world is waiting for your answer. The shadows are waiting for your command. Awaken, O sleeper, and rise from the dead, and Christ shall give you light. That light is your own consciousness. Turn it on, and let the shadows flee away. We have arrived at the end of our journey tonight, but in the world of spirit, every end is a new beginning. We have traveled through the shadows of the material world. We have witnessed the defiance of rationality. We have seen the resurrection of the dead, and we have peeked behind the veil of the flesh to see the King. Now you stand at the threshold of your own life. You are holding the key in your hand. The question that remains is not whether the key works. The stories of Louise and the vision of the child have proven that the key works. The question is whether you will have the courage to put it in the lock and turn it. I want to offer you a final assurance that you are not alone in this, and that your victory is not a matter of chance but a matter of law. Let this be the night you stop being a victim of circumstance. For too long you have told yourself the story that you are unlucky, or that you are unworthy, or that the odds are stacked against you. That story is a lie. It is a shadow that you have kept alive by your own attention. Tonight I want you to rewrite that story. Look at the life of Louise. She faced the ultimate tragedy. She faced the loss of a child, which is the deepest pain a human heart can endure. She faced the collapse of her business world. To the eyes of the census taker, she was a woman struck down by fate. But she did not accept that verdict. She realized that the pain was not a tomb, it was a womb. It was the pressure applied to the coal to turn it into a diamond. You may be in the furnace right now. The heat may be intense. You may feel that you are being burned, but I assure you that you are not being burned, you are being purified. The dross of your doubt is being consumed so that the gold of your character can be revealed. If Louise had not lost Larry, she would never have discovered the power to resurrect the dead. If she had not faced eviction, she would never have discovered the power to move mountains in business. Your struggle is your servant. It is forcing you to awaken. It is pushing you into the arms of your own imagination, because the world has offered you no other place to go. Do not despise the fire. Thank the fire, for out of it comes the King. I want you to go into the silence tonight with a new confidence. The silence is not emptiness. It is the fullness of God waiting to be shaped. When you close your eyes and shut out the world of talking shadows, you are entering the Holy of Holies. In that space there is no judgment. There is no past. There is only the eternal. Now, meet your desire there. Do not beg for it. Do not plead with God as if he were a reluctant giver. Embrace your desire as you would embrace a lover who has returned from a long journey. It is yours. It has always been yours. You are simply remembering what you had forgotten. Remember the velvet skin that Louise touched. That is the standard of reality you must aim for. Your imagination is not a wispy cloud. It is substantial. It is the rock upon which the world rests. When you imagine success, feel the solidity of it. Feel the weight of the money in your hand. Feel the texture of the furniture. Hear the voices of your friends congratulating you. Make it so real that when you open your eyes, you are shocked to find that you are still here. This internal touching is what anchors the reality. The world tells you that seeing is believing. I tell you that believing is seeing. You must touch it in the spirit before you can hold it in the flesh. And here is my promise to you. If you dare to persist in this assumption, the world must change. It has no choice. It is under compulsion to reflect your state of consciousness. You might say, but Neville, how long will it take? That is the voice of the shadow speaking. Do not ask how long. The moment you ask how long, you are acknowledging that you do not have it. Be like Louise. She did not ask how long. She simply entered the state and stayed there until the state expelled her into the physical realization. It might be tomorrow. It might be next month. But it is inevitable. The vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it will flower. Do not be afraid of the shadow world. It is a paper tiger. It looks fierce. It roars with the voice of your creditors and your doctors and your critics. But it has no teeth. It can only bite you if you give it your fear. Withdraw your fear and the shadow collapses. Walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil because you know who you are. You are the king wearing the coat of skin. Nothing can hurt the king. The king is the operant power. When you walk into a room, carry that atmosphere with you. Let the dignity of your true identity shine through your eyes. People will feel it. Circumstances will bend to it. I leave you with this thought. The greatest tragedy is not death. The greatest tragedy is to live a life of sleep while you hold the power to wake up. You have been given a gift that the angels envy. You have been given the power to create reality. Do not bury that talent in the ground of fear. Invest it. Risk it. Test it. Prove me wrong. I challenge you to prove me wrong. Try to imagine a state lovingly and persistently and see if it does not come to pass. You will find that you cannot prove it wrong because it is the law of being. So tonight, as you lay your head on the pillow, do not let your last thought be of your problems. That is worshiping the devil. Let your last thought be of your victory. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Let the last thing you touch be the hand of your success. Let the last thing you hear be the voice of your friend saying, I am so happy for you. Ride that feeling into the deep of sleep. And while you sleep, the king within you will move the mountains and part the seas to bring your desire to your doorstep. You are the light of the world. Do not hide your light. Shine. Shine for yourself. Shine for your family. Shine for the generations to come. The world is waiting for you to remember who you are. It is waiting for the sons and daughters of God to reveal themselves. The wait is over. The time is now. You are the one. It is done. It is finished. Go in peace and walk in the glory of your own wonderful human imagination. If you have felt the truth of this message in your heart, seal it now. Click the like button as an act of agreement. Subscribe to Master the Law of Assumption to ensure you never walk alone in the shadows again. And in the comments, leave your decree. Write simply, I am the king. My world obeys. Let that be your final word tonight. Thank you. The king within you has heard this message. Now, it is time for the king to act. If this truth has resonated with your soul, do not let it fade. Seal this covenant by liking this video. Subscribe to Master the Law of Assumption so that you are constantly reminded of who you truly are. And finally, leave your decree in the comments below. Simply write, I am the king. My word is law. Let that be the first command of your new life. Thank you for watching, and walk in your glory.